Well, hello. Today I'm going to start a several video series about good books. And I thought, let's get it out of the way. Let's talk about bad books first. And I'm just going to mention, first of all, everything in this video is 100% opinion. Second of all, I was predicting that you were all going to ask for my Turtle Mountain driving footage, because I used the word beautiful in it, but nope, we got Needles and what was the other one? Iron Mountain Highway. So that's the footage I'm running here. I'm not actually on Needles Highway yet, but this part is worth seeing, so I'm just going to include it. And yeah, we'll go from there. When I had planned this, I was going to do the footage between Carrington and Medina, but there you go. So, let's talk about good books. And I'm just going to mention everything, absolutely everything in this video, 100% opinion. Books that I hate, you might love. Books that I hate, I might love in another 20 years. Who knows? So take everything with a grain of salt and don't take it too personally. So first of all, why read? I look at books as kind of a repository of human knowledge and experience. I mean, you have the thoughts, the ideas, the wealth of millennia written down. Why wouldn't you read it? So, question that came up recently was, when is the last time you changed your mind on an issue, especially a major issue? Well, why did you change your mind? And there's a strong chance a book or two had something to do with it. Books get into your mind in a way that other things don't. Books force you to think, take ideas on, weigh them. And you may just decide, no, I don't agree with that. Or you may decide, whoa, I'm changing my mind. So, yeah, books are powerful because they are a repository of human knowledge. Before we were writing, everything was through storytelling. Totally different world. Now, in this video, I'm not going to separate fiction and nonfiction. I think that could be a topic of a future video, but I will just say that my opinion is that both have value. And yeah, I could talk for a long time about books. So let's do that. In this video, I'm not going to talk about bad books or good books. I'm just going to talk about books that I don't keep in my collection. So let's dive into that. I had to pause there. I realized that I left my drip tape on. My garden's been watered for about an hour longer than it needed to be. Alright, so the first category of books I want to talk about is what I call junk food. And again, these are books, not that they're bad books, although some of them will be. These are books I just don't bother keeping. Although a lot of my junk food books are ebooks, so it's not like they take up any space, but anyway, so sometimes you're traveling and you're just like, I gotta fill my stomach. So you stop at a gas station, buy a gross hamburger that's under their heating lamp. You don't know how long it's been under the heating lamp, and when you taste it, it's kind of nasty and full of preservatives. But darn it, you were hungry and it filled your belly. And, you know, you might have been hungry again an hour later because that's how that crap works. But it filled you for the moment. Some books are like that. Anybody have guilty pleasures? You know, I really like the movie Tremors. It's hilarious. It's a movie about giant worms living in the sand of rural Nevada. okay, maybe there's a little bit to it, but it's a stupid movie. Or what about Warm Bodies? A zombie movie about the hipster zombie who loves a human girl. Stupid, but I enjoy it. And there are junk food books just like this. They're entertaining for the moment, but they're not filling. They don't stick with you afterwards. And sometimes you need that. You just need a time filler. You need an escape. You need just something mindless when you're down. And books can be that. I'm going to try not to name and shame too much, but especially there's a couple of junk food ones coming up as reviews, so we'll just be nice for now. And the genre has value. You know, there are times we just need to mindlessly shut off and take a break. And junk food books are like that. Now, I want to talk about books I don't like also. And that's a little bit longer topic because I'm going to get into several subtopics with it. These are books that I often don't finish. Or if I do, I'm just like, okay, seriously, why did you finish that? That was stupid. I've been known to set books down without finishing them. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. You should too. Life is too short to waste on bad books. And I am very well aware that sometimes it takes a while to get into a book. I'm not one of those that, if it doesn't grab me by the first sentence, that puppy's gone. I'm not even if it doesn't grab me by the first chapter, that puppy's gone. But you do reach a point where you're just like, why am I reading this? I'm currently reading Walter von Tilburg Clark's The Oxbow Incident. And most of the first chapter is setting the scene and introducing characters. We're not really seeing what it's about yet. But you know what? It's engrossing. Older style, of course. Nowadays, books, you gotta, boom, get into the action right away. But, you know, older books, you don't have that so much. And that's okay. Set the scene. Let us get to know people. I'm not a child. I don't need to be constantly entertained. But engross me. Engage me somehow. And some books just fail to do that. You might not like how long it takes for J.R.R. Tolkien to set up Bilbo Baggins' birthday party in The Fellowship of the Ring. But I'll tell you what, Tolkien keeps it engrossing. The other thing he does is he hints at larger things to come. And really, when you finish it, you realize that, oh my God, what he was really doing is showing us the innocent world that people like Frodo and Samwise are forced to leave behind, and that they're defending. And honestly, especially in the case of Frodo, this is a world that they will never be able to return to. They might physically be back there, but their minds will never be as innocent. They will never be able to go back to that world. So, I struggled a little bit to actually come up with good examples of bad books. Now, the main reason is when I read a bad book, well, I don't finish it, and I promptly forget all about it, because what a waste of time. But let's look at a few traits, and I will, as I'm able, I'll try to remember names. But, again, this is all opinion. These may be books that you absolutely love, and you just may be thinking, how dare you? Well, get over it, sunshine. Books, just like fountain pens, there's so much opinion there. One of the reasons I could never be an English teacher, because when they're trying to read these deep themes into some novel, and you're just like, or they're just cowboys taking a ride. You know, I'm not an English teacher. Although I do have a book or two that talks about how to read books like an English teacher, so I'll have to read them soon. So one of the things that makes me mad, and this may fall more on the non-fiction side than the fiction side, but is misinformation. Now, I'm only a high school science teacher. I don't have a high-level science degree. I'm no genius. I'm just an ordinary person. But I know enough science that I can tell when it's blatantly false information. I remember tossing a book, and I wish I could tell you what it is, because it's one I would warn you away from. But I mean, literally tossed it in the trash when I started to read it, because it looked so good that I bought it at the bookstore. And then I got it home, and it started in on creationism, started in on about how Noah's flood is actually real, it started in on climate science, and it was about the climate science part. I just said, why am I wasting my time with this? And I pitched it. It is healthy to read other viewpoints and challenge your own viewpoints. But honestly, what I got to with this book, because I was hate reading it by the point I threw it away. Yeah, I got to see how they deliberately misrepresented science. Or ignored science. But really, what was I getting out of it except raising my blood pressure? So I pitched it in the trash, and oh well, because I'm not going to donate that to the library or a used bookstore, because I don't want other people reading that garbage. So another one, and I'm going to link these together, and this is kind of an uncomfortable linkage, but you'll see why in the end. Sex and Violence. Now, sex and violence are both part of life, and I'll get to why I put them together here in a minute, because they are definitely two different things. One is fun, the other one isn't, but they are part of life, and they both belong in books. I think the word I would add is the word gratuitous. I started a book, again, like I said, I don't remember titles of books that I just quit reading, but I started a book where women were throwing themselves at this man, this main character, and just going at it like bunnies. I mean, he had more sex than a normal person has in a year, just in a couple of days. And, you know, I just thought to myself, this author is living out his fantasies. He's wishing he was that desired. Which is very cynical, because I don't even know the author, but ugh. And, now, I'll concede, maybe this sex advances the story. Okay, sure. Maybe we're trying to see that we've got some kind of a nymphomaniac on our hands. But no, it was just sex. Yeah, I guess I just thought, if that's what this character does all the time, how has he not caught something by now? Something nasty. And then you have those books that where you've got this play-by-play, where you learn about inserting tab A into slot B. I mean, okay, call me crazy, but I do know how it works. I do know what the parts do. And I really don't need to read all the gory details. The real thing is just a lot more fun. And I am the same way about violence. I want you to compare Tolkien's battle scenes in his books to the battle scenes in the novels, with Super Elf leaping from Oliphant to Oliphant. Violence wasn't Tolkien's focus, except as how it moved the larger story forward. But then sometimes you read books that dwell on it just way too much. And then there's books that dwell on the details. Or they throw it in and just, well, let's forget about reality. Let's just... Okay, so I'm thinking of one book where it was how old was he? He was 80-something. I forget exactly where in his 80s he was. But he was this super soldier and just like, okay, you could be a healthy 80-year-old. I know some cowboys who are pretty healthy 80-year-olds. But yeah, they're not super soldiers getting in big fights anymore. Or I'm just thinking of this book. Can't remember the title either. But anyway, there were these aliens that were grabbing humans and using them as food. Now, that could be a cool concept. The TV show Twilight Zone used that as the premise behind their episode To Serve Man. You learn at the end of the episode that the title is actually literal. No violence. Very chilling concept, though. But the book I'm thinking of had our heroes boarding this alien spaceship, and despite deck-by-deck battles, the aliens just kept butchering and eating the whole time during the battles. And wow, was it graphic. And just like, nope. Just no. Not my thing. And one I particularly struggle with is torture. Especially what some people might call torture porn. You know, sometimes you have to understand what the torture reveals. George Orwell's 1984, we see the character Winston Smith get quite violently tortured. But what it does is reveal both his character and the true horror that is his world. Now, as a kid once, back as a kid, I couldn't have articulated the difference. And yeah, just like now, I used to write. And some of that writing is pretty violent. A lot of gratuitous violence, and strangely, no sex. You know, the Game of Thrones TV series there was a Saturday Night Live skit that accused it of being written by a 13-year-old boy. Because all the gratuitous sex and violence. But, yeah, I just, even back as a kid, when I would read, not writing, read, you know, because as a writer, I didn't understand the whole thing. I didn't like the gratuitous sex and violence even back then. Now, I said earlier in this particular category that I grouped sex and violence together, because that is actually a combination I really struggle with. Now, I have never in my life been a victim of sexual violence. I know a handful of people who have been. I'm also not someone that they're ever going to discuss it with. But I really struggle with reading it. I thought through a couple of different books, but then one of them really came to me. And so I'm just going to name and shame this time. So Ayn Rand wrote a book called The Fountainhead. It's a well-known book that honestly, I had to force myself to finish it, and I was hoping to find what had made it so well-known. Because back then I was a lot more conservative, and I just thought, you know, all these conservative people that I look up to love this thing, and yeah, I could not see why. So early on in the book, our protagonist, Mr. Howard Rourke, rapes Dominique Francois. Up until then, I didn't see that coming. You know, I saw the sexual attraction between them, but reading that was pretty horrific. And I am stunned that the black and white movie starring Gary Cooper and Patricia Neal in those two roles kept that horrific scene. I don't know, is it meet cute? And the book did not get better. I mean, you know, without going into graphic detail, because that's not what this video is supposed to be about, but Dominique Francoeur debased herself sexually through the whole book. It was horrifying. So, yeah, I struggle with sexual violence. And yeah, there are books, they're out there, where it makes sense, and I will soldier through. Paolo Bacigalupi makes me very uncomfortable with it in books like The Wind-Up Girl or Shipbreaker or The Water Knife. But in those books, it makes sense. And it really shows the horror and the desperation those characters are living. So yeah, sex and violence, part of life. And I think the word gratuitous is where I have a problem with it. So now that we got the big one out of the way, let's go to some smaller ones. This will be a easy one. You ever read a book where nothing happens? Now, sometimes you read a book and you realize that, okay, I am experiencing a world. I always link to the MICE quotient on my video descriptions. MICE stands for milieu, idea, character, and event. Milieu books, you may often have a lot of nothing happening, but what they'll do, the successful ones will do, is they'll create a compelling world. Nikolai Gogol wrote, well, he died before he finished it, but started a book called Dead Souls. It's a very compelling description of pre-revolutionary Russia. Even though the novel was never finished, I find that quite readable. And then you read these novels where absolutely nothing of consequence happens. And, you know, maybe that's the point. Maybe they're just trying to do a slice of life or whatever, but I find them hard to read. And like I said, opinion. Maybe you're all into that insert tab A into tab B sex scene stuff. I know I'm not judging, I'm just telling you where I am. So another one that'll get me is bad characters. Now, I've read books with anti-heroes. I've read books where awful people are forced to find their inner good side. And sometimes you read books where you see that these awful people have a human side, even though you're hoping they'll lose the whole time. Those can be really compelling and really mind-bending. You know, like I said, about reading books that challenge you. And then you read books where the characters are just all awful people. Or maybe you read a book where there's what they call a Mary Sue. I think the male version is a Marty Sue, but I might have that wrong. But this is a character who's perfect in every way. And they're absolutely insufferable. You know, they're kind of like the stand-in for the author, or the author's fantasy woman or fantasy man or whatever. Nobody's perfect. We all have things we're working through. And it's not just, oh, sometimes I try too hard. Well, I remember in college, we talked about interviewing for jobs in one of my education classes, and we're told to find a noble weakness, something that makes you sound good, but you express it as a weakness, because you'll get an employer's asking, well, what's your biggest weakness? Well, I just don't know how to run a classroom. Okay, we're not hiring you. So instead you say something like, oh, I'm just such a perfectionist. Okay, who doesn't see through that nonsense? So, Anyway, and sometimes you read books where the characters are pure archetypes. They're just meant to represent specific viewpoints or ideas, and they're not actually characters. Not Paul Bunyan. I forget his first name. Pilgrim's Progress, anyway, is all archetypes. The Slough of Despond. Another one that'll get me is racism. Now, I have already reviewed some books that involve racism, and sometimes it's needed in the story. Imagine Harper Lee's Go Set a Watchman, or To Kill a Mockingbird without racism in them. These are these are books that absolutely would not exist without racism, and they address it. They address it in the right way. I don't have a problem with that. And then you read books where they're just casually racist due to the time in which they're written. I remember reading a Hardy Boys book, which there's a Native American construction worker that they're hanging out with for the book, and they praise him because his people are naturally good at balance and working in high places. Which, okay, yeah, mild racism, meant with good heart, but still, like I said, when I hate a book, I just don't remember it. So that's what I came up with. But you read books that are just like, are we really saying that about this group of people? Apparently, yes. So there are books where the racism is just a given, especially newer books where they just can't hide behind their era. The Hardy Boys, that was kind of the culture back when this book was written. Try and read John Buchanan, and you definitely run into some racism there. But newer books, they should be smarter. And older books, there's a difference between kind of reflecting the time and, oh yeah, we just hate this group of people. Now, I'll caution you though, because some books are a lot more subversive. In 1972, Norman Spinrad published a novel called The Iron Dream, and it's a novel he wrote, and yeah, we're going there. He wrote as though Adolf Hitler never made it big, as a dictator of a fascist government, and instead came to America and became a science fiction writer. And needless to say, that novel was a little controversial, but not something Norman Spinrad was so scared of. It was the only novel I've ever read where all the main characters castrated themselves to ensure racial purity. It was pretty bonkers, honestly. And that was kind of the point. He was, in a lot of ways, poking fun at a lot of the ideas of the Nazis. And again, okay, actually, let's just drop that. I'm uncomfortable talking about that topic any further. But it is probably a one-time only, but an interesting read. So, to wrap this whole thing up, let's just be fair. Some books take time. Sometimes you just need to read for a few chapters and you say, okay, I get where you're headed here. Sometimes you just need to get older. Hopefully, you change as you age. And as we age and change, our views on politics, sex, religion, and so much more change. 20-something me would be pretty horrified by 40-something me. if you're afraid of taking on new ideas, maybe you don't change. As an example of changes in me, back when I was in college, I read Dan Simmons' Hyperion series. And I hated it. Now, at age 46, I love it. So nothing in this video is absolute. And if you like whatever it is, okay, maybe not the racism, but if you like whatever it is, go nuts. Maybe you like reading sexual violence. As long as you're not doing it, go nuts. So nothing in this video is absolute. We change as we age. And yeah, we're all individuals. We all like different things. Maybe that book that I just tossed aside this week is a book you absolutely love. And that's okay. We're different. So this video was about what I don't like. I'm going to talk next week about what I do like. So I want to thank you for... Oops, got the hiccups now all of a sudden, so it's a good thing the video's almost over. So I want to thank you for watching. We'll talk to you later. And enjoy Needles Highway. Bye-bye.